If you came across this podcast, you may have typed in, "Do you know him?" If so, who or what are you looking for in life? If you'd like to talk to someone about this, or if there is something you'd like to hear about in a future episode, then please email us at doyouknowhimpodcast@gmail.com. And now on to today's episode.
Welcome to the Do You Know Him podcast. This is Lowell King, and I'll be your host. Today's podcast I'm entitling Quick Stop. And in preparation for this podcast this morning, I was thinking about how we all go through a daily routine, so to speak, of getting ready for work and then venturing out into the traffic and finding our way at work and going through the daily routine that we go through there. And every once in a while, our day will be disrupted by the necessity to make a quick stop. When I say that quick stop, what I mean is we might have to stop at the gas station to fill up the tank with gasoline. We may have to drop something off at the dry cleaners, or possibly we may have to pick up something at the grocery store on the way home, and invariably something that your wife needs to complete the meal she's preparing for the family that evening. But in some cases, these quick stops turn out to be not quick stops. They turn out to be long stops or nightmare stops in some cases. What I mean by that is that something goes wrong. And it's funny because when you think about it, I was thinking about this program that used to be on television years ago. I don't think it's on anymore. It's called Candid Camera. And they would have these ridiculous circumstances people would find themselves in, and then they would record the responses the people would provide by videotaping them and audio taping to see what their responses would be if something really, really strange happened to them. And there's times I'm sure that we all might look around and wonder, is somebody orchestrating this? Is somebody have a camera going here to see how my response will be to this craziness that's going on right now? Well, anyway, that's kind of the background of what was going on in this particular story. So my wife and I are returning from this trip, and we were tired, and we just wanted to pick up these couple of items from the grocery store and get home so we could rest from the long drive. And we picked up the items, got them in our grocery cart, and off we went to the Checkers. And when we got up there, all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, this store is amazingly busy for a weekday. I didn't expect that many people. I think it was around 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but it was amazingly busy. And every single Checker had about 8 or 9 people in line. So I looked at all the different Checkers, and I remembered this one particular lady by the name of, I'm going to use the name Mary. That's not really her name, but I'm going to use the name Mary. And Mary was always a very cordial lady. She was one of those people I just loved to say hello to and make chit-chat with as she was checking us out. And so I decided, I didn't really mind waiting a few minutes, and she was usually very efficient in her checking. So I got in her line, and everything was going fine. It was moving right along, and I was probably about 4 people ahead of me. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, another young lady who looked like she was still in high school, I'll call her Susie. Susie showed up to relieve Mary. And as I was looking at Susie, I was thinking, oh my gosh, well, I hope this girl has had enough training because it's really busy right now. And she looks so young, I don't know whether she's even learned how to be a checker yet. So anyway, I thought, well, I'll just stay. What else can I do? I'm in line, and there's about 3 or 4 people ahead of me by now. And I thought, I'll just wait. And so off goes Mary and into the distance to take her break or lunch or whatever she was doing. And Susie took over. So I'm up to the point where there's one person in line ahead of me. And I'm thinking, well, we're almost out of here. And all of a sudden, it starts to go wrong. For some reason, the cash register stopped working. So Susie did her best to try to get the cash register working again, and she couldn't figure it out. So then finally she called the manager. I'm standing there, and I turned around to look. There's probably 8 or 9 people behind me. The line seemed like they're getting longer. And I thought, well, what else can I do except just sit here and wait? So the manager finally announces that, I'm sorry, you folks are going to have to get another line. This cash register is broken. There's nothing we can do. I'm sorry, go in and get another line. So I moved out, and by the time everyone behind me, actually, who was behind me, wound up in front of me because they moved quicker than I did. And I wound up getting behind again in a line. There was probably another 8 or 9 people ahead of me. But I was in the very next line over from where I was already at. So I'm waiting my turn, and they're checking along, and the next thing you know, I'm down to about 5 or 6, maybe four to 5 people ahead of me. And all of a sudden, Susie walks over to me again, and she said, I'm really sorry that you're going through all this. She said, I really appreciate your patience. Would you come on over? She said, we got the register fixed. I'm going to take you first. And I thought, oh, that's very nice. So I get out of line, I go over, and I get back over in the same line I was in with Susie before, after she had given Mary the break. And she starts to ring up the items. The very first item she rings, the cash register breaks again. So she calls the manager over again, and they fool around with the darn thing for, I don't know, a couple, 3 or 4 minutes. And I thought, this quick stop is not being a quick stop. It is like sometimes the fast food is not fast food. It takes a little longer. So I thought, well, okay, go ahead and fix it. And then next thing I know, Susie looks at me and she says, well, you're not going to believe this, but this thing is broken for sure this time. We cannot ring you up. You're going to have to get another line. I turned around and looked, and I thought, is somebody pulling my leg here, or is this really happening to me? So I went and I backed out my cart. I looked up and down the line, and all the way to my right, there was a young guy there. He looked like a college kid. He looked like actually he should have been playing some kind of sport, very clean-cut kid, and he looked like he was moving really well. And I don't know, for whatever reason, that's the line I got into. So I went from the far left all the way to the far right, and I got in his line. And again, there was 8 or 9 people ahead of me, and I'm standing there, waiting and waiting, and I'm up to about, probably about 4 people ahead of me at this point. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, appears Mary. And Mary comes back, the checker that I wanted to have be my checker, and she takes over for this young man, and she's now checking in his line. So now I'm back to the checker that I really did want in the first place. Of course, it's been now 20 minutes later, or 25 minutes later, and as I got up, one person ahead of me, out of nowhere, here comes Susie again. And I thought, oh my gosh, I hope she's not going to relieve Mary, because I didn't want to have another repeat of what had happened over at the other side of the store. And no, what Susie was doing, she came to be a courtesy clerk to help Mary. So that was great. And so finally we got up to the line, and having been through a few of these things in my life, and after I became a Christian, I began to understand that sometimes when these things happen, there's a good reason for it. And so I stopped for a minute, and I looked at Mary, and I said, you know what, Mary? I said, I know this is going to sound a little bit strange to you, but this is what I call a God moment, and you're probably not going to understand everything I just went through, and I know you don't have time to hear the story, but I just need to ask you, is there something that I can pray for you about, or something I can do to help you? Because I said, this whole thing, the way this has transpired today, it's almost like someone's orchestrating it. And I have to say that because of the fact, after I became a Christian, this is a little bit different attitude than I had before I was a Christian. Before I was a Christian, I probably just would have walked out of the store. But now, this time, I'm realizing that God's trying to get my attention to try to maybe understand what He's doing in the lives of people around me. And so I'm reaching out to Mary to say, is there something I can do for you? Is there something I can pray for you, whatever? And she looked at me kind of strange, and then she said, no, she says, I seem to be, there's nothing I can think of. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'm in here from time to time. And I said, if you see me and something comes up, I want you to feel free to just tell me what you need me to pray about. Because I said, I just sense that God is showing me that there's something that I need to pray for you about. And then she got a funny look on her face and she said, oh, I know what it is. She said, it's my sister. My sister has cancer, and I'm going to visit her in Florida next week. Can you pray for my sister? And I said, okay, let me do that. I will promise you that I will pray for her. And I did pray for her about 2 or 3 weeks, every single day. But the next day, what I did was I took a copy of my book down to the store, actually 2 copies, one for her and one for her sister, and I signed them for both of them. And I asked her if she would give it to her sister, and she did. And by the way, as far as I know, she did read the book as well. But I just was thinking, as I was thinking about this in preparation for the podcast today, that there's times when we have to just stop and realize that sometimes God is orchestrating something in our life. He's not only preparing to use us in some special way, but at the same time, he wants to see how we're going to respond to circumstances that we find ourselves in. So I think how we respond is how we can bring glory to him. Because if we're calling ourselves Christians and we respond in a negative way, then that doesn't bring any glory to him. So anyway, just wanted to share that story with you today. Next time you have a trip that you're going to take to a grocery store or a bank or filling up your gas tank, and when something goes wrong, just take a moment, take a deep breath, look around and say, wonder what's going on here. Who is orchestrating all of this? Anyway, this is Lowell King. I'm asking you the very most important question that anyone will ever ask you in your entire life. Do you know him?